We've got to put words to this thing, I'm telling you. Yeah. Well, welcome to Biblical Chili, everybody. Today it may just be me, but that's all right. We're going to have some fun here. Oh, wait, no.
I'm late.
It's okay. Look at that. That's awesome.
I got busy and
You mean life.
yeah, life.
Well, that's okay. Today we're going to have an interesting one. It's not something we touch on a lot, but I do know that it's something that's very charged right now, politically speaking. But yeah, nonetheless.
Jordan.
Awesome. Well, I thought Josh will be here in just a few minutes, just so everyone's aware. He's going to be a little bit late, but he will be here. So, yeah, praise God. And Joe possibly as well. So that's going to be good too.
Everybody's running late today.
That's okay. That's okay. Oh, I know that guy. Hey, awesome. Perfect timing, actually. The credits, the opening credits are just rolling.
I will be sitting back over
Oh, I think he's breaking up. Can you hear him?
Yeah, he's breaking up. I couldn't understand him.
Yeah, you're breaking up, man. Uh-oh. I think it's just the audio.
Yeah, it's his picture was fine.
Yeah, his picture looked okay. So, excellent. All right, so today we're going to be talking about, and I might have Joe take this up. He, in the Chili chat, he was the one that kind of brought this one up, and I think it was very interesting. When he started talking about it, I go, oh, wow. This one could be a two-parter, but I don't know where this is going to go today. So let me go ahead and pull up just a snippet of kind of what we talked about. And this is, I'll just kind of have this the launching pad for where we're going here. The words revival and revolution have been coming up quite a bit lately, but sometimes we wonder, meaning the Chili crew, sometimes we wonder if triggering a quote-unquote revolution is what Jesus has called us to do in the first place. And I think I will have Joe, if he's able to come back on here, I think I will have Joe clarify that. But if I'm understanding correctly, and Sean, I would love your input on this as well, because it was kind of a short conversation that was just kind of brought up in the chat, and I think it has some precedence here, because I've heard, and maybe you have also, but I've heard of a lot of Christians almost have this attitude of the Christians should be the ones who are
Fighting, so to speak.
Yeah, fighting, pushing the cultural revolutions and the like being justice warriors kind of thing. And I've heard of church sermons who have brought this up before as well, and pastors who really push this kind of stuff, and a lot of their congregation is involved in different things. Now, whether it's on the left side of the political spectrum or the right, it's not really the point, but it's talking about, should Christians more or less be diving in head first in these type of social and political movements, revolution? What was the term that was brought up in the chat? I thought it was really good. Revival, revolution. Now I protest the word revival a little bit, because I think revival is supposed to bring forth change, bring forth change on an individual basis.
Change in your heart.
Yeah, right. Like an actual change. And I heard, actually, I wish I would have brought these up when we did when we talked about Ashbury. There was who was it? Sturgeon. Do you remember Sturgeon?
I've heard of them. Yeah.
Okay, so short version is this was during the time of a huge um, religious upheaval in America, and Surgeon was sending out pastors, like he was training people how to do revivals. Now, mind you, in those days, the revivals were different, way different. Like the revival was like they would bring in a barrel, okay, like an oil drum barrel or something like that, and people would come in and they would drop whatever the things are that they were addicted to or that was controlling their life in it, and they would just light it on fire. Like that kind of change, like those were revivals. And I know we think about that and we're like, what?
Well,
Yeah.
well, when I was younger, when I was a teenager, way back then, we had record burnings,
Oh,
CD
wow.
burnings and everything.
Yeah.
Get rid of your secular music. So when you talk about revive or revolution, it's kind of, to me, it kind of goes back in the old, like the 70s and so on. I guess we'll have to have Joe kind of explain it a little bit.
Yeah, we were kind of going off of the comments that kind of came from the Chili Chat, and it was kind of the launching pad for this. So we're just kind of discussing that just a little bit. Did you want to explain what you were talking about, Joe?
Yeah. So it feels like the soup of the day right now is revolution and revival and all of those things. I'll be honest with you guys. Confession with the Saints time. I heard about Asbury, and I'm like, At least, if nothing else, this is something that social media needs to stay out of. If this is authentic, then this is something that the Twitter machines and the nonsense and the noise and all of that kind of stuff needs to stay out of, and let it be organic. Let it be what it is. Because there's a lot of people giving their 2 cents, right? We've all got platforms here. And so we see this thing going on and we're going to jump on our platforms and give our hot takes where we haven't stepped foot in what's going on. We have no idea what's actually going on there on the ground. We're just reading somebody else's interpretation and then giving our interpretation of an interpretation. But I hit this point of...
That's like the only thing that people can do when they're talking about it without being there, like you said, with a foot on the ground, you know?
Right. So my whole thing was I'm reading through all of this stuff as far as Asbury goes, and I've watched some of the videos and all of that kind of stuff. You know, it's one of those things you hope that it's real, because revival, that's something that has happened over and over and over again in different forms, in different functions. I just gave a lecture this morning on evidence for the empty tomb, and it was academically themed and apologetically driven and all of that kind of stuff. Every once in a while, I'm kind of known as the spirit guy, the kingdom guy, and I talk a lot about that kind of stuff. But what brought me to the dance was taking this book and saying, man, this book makes a lot of tall claims. So let's start checking some of this stuff off, because if you can corroborate the empty tomb, at least beyond reasonable doubt, then a whole lot more becomes a whole lot more palatable. And along the way, you kind of read the genesis of the early church. Right? Its roots in Jerusalem, and then where it went out from there and all of that kind of stuff. And you see over and over and over again a pushing out of the kingdom, a pushing out of the word, and these little pockets of these seemingly random to the outside observer pockets of feeling like there is you're watching something happen. And that's part of why I say about social media staying out of it, is because anybody who spent 30 seconds with a microphone and a camera knows that you can present whatever you please in front of a microphone and a camera. I can make you believe anything that you want to believe with enough time and having the right script and shooting the right angles and
Right.
all of those kinds of things. And so I feel like it's instilled this age of skepticism and cynicism when it comes to what I'm seeing. You almost have to assume that it is clever camera work and trick of the angle and all of that kind of stuff. And so if it really is organic, if it really is a movement of the spirit, then let it be what it is. You know what I mean? And all of that kind of stuff. Baked into this conversation along the way has been these talks of revolution and all of that kind of stuff. And it kind of brought about a thought process in my head of, you know, I'm biased. I cannot yet. I've been around the church for decades with an S, but most of that time was not with a real relationship. I wanted to believe. I wanted to so bad believe, but there was no heart level relationship there. And so when it comes to actually walking with God and all of that, being a just outside of 2020 convert shows with some of what I'm going to say, right? And it's going to have proof text in that.
When you say revolution, I just want to get clarification. What do you mean by revolution? Do you mean like for some, I don't know, politically involves all of the social justice warrior type of like revolution, or a mixture of all of it, or what do you mean?
Well, a mixture of all of it, and you know, we talk about this movie that came out and talking about this movement from the 70s and all of that, and I've heard a lot in response to the last several years, but also in response to this movie of almost like this stance of we need to bring it back to the good old days, right? We need to have another revolution for Jesus and get the right people into power and do the right things and push all of those kinds of things forward. And I'm left asking the question, you know, one of my dear friends is in that Gen X crowd.
Okay.
And he grew up in one of the, oh, help me out, fellas. Is it Calvary? Is that the name of the church that the whole thing is centered around? Calvary Chapel?
Yeah, it's Calvary Chapel, I believe.
Okay. So he grew up in their youth group system and grew up a part of that church. And so he is very much like, to hear his words, it sings a little bit differently to me because he can tie like, what if this never happened? Where would I be? Would I have ever met my wife? Because they met in youth group and our lifelong sweethearts in the whole 9 yards. And so I can't deny the good that pushing out the kingdom does in the world and the ripple effects that it has. But where it seems like all of this stuff, the revival conversation, the revolution conversation, has a way of getting has become co-opted in a way, is when you start to lend towards this dimension of, well, us as Christians need to put our people in the right places so that way we can change the world. But were we ever supposed to change the world? Was that ever the name of the game? Was for us to change the world?
You know, that's a really good question. I've heard pastors say stuff like this before, and talking about Jesus. And the fact is that even Jesus said phrases like "render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's," and basically was saying, "Listen, we have to live like in this world and affect that which we can affect." But Jesus never came in. It was, let's get the pitchforks and torches, man, and let's start storming the Capitol, or let's go to Rome, and that kind of thing. when even Peter, I'm just giving the examples of Jesus, like even when Peter pulled out his sword and he's like, this is the time, this is it, this is when I'm going to be able to be that zealot, this guy, and he pulls out his sword and lobs off the air, and Jesus is like, hold on, just wait a minute. And then he goes back around and heals the guy, and he says, Peter, that's not what we're here for. Like, this is not the point, dude. Like, you've been with me for this long and you're not getting it yet. Nothing against Peter. I'm just saying, for just sake of argument. But that's a really good question, though. It was, what was, when Jesus came down here, is that what he tried to stir up? Is that what he tried to do? And I would think probably not. At least not the way that most people think of when it comes to the word revolution. You know what I mean? I would think it almost sounds like a revolution, one heart at a time, not a revolution like, let's all band together. I guess, I don't know. You said it best, and I don't need to repeat what you said. Like, let's strategically place our people where they need to be to make the political changes that we desire as Christians, that we desire. Let me ask this question though about that. How far should Christians go then when it comes to the political realm then, in trying to, and this is for both you guys, like, which I don't disagree with you at all, Joe, because I think you're right. I think we get this total misunderstanding that, this is all about, we've got to make the laws and we've got to change it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, because there are some people that are called to do it. Okay, fine. But I don't think that was Christ's intent. But in lieu of just that, kind of another springboard question would be, how far should Christians go then? Sean, were you going to say something?
No, I was just laughing because I seen that look on Joe's face.
Yeah. So, man, if you would have asked me this 3 years ago, I would have given you a totally different answer. Even a year ago, I would have given you a totally different answer than I'm about to give. I am, for context, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Joe, and I'm a 90s kid through and through. I am
yeah, buddy.
as anti-establishment as you could probably get, and I still wrestle with bringing that under the rule and reign of Jesus, because I've seen what the powers that be can do, and that was something that would be very, very reflected when I would comment on Christians in politics. I would say things like, why are you wasting your time? Shut up and read your Bible. Different things like that.
So has your view changed from that?
It has. Yeah. Now, I say this to say, I am not going to roll out and go and vote. That's not my bag. And whatever. And different people have different opinions, and you ask 5 people their opinions on politics, and you're going to get 16 different answers. I get it. It's absolutely cool. But I guess the thesis statement of where I've gotten to as far as this whole thing is, whatever you do it unto the Lord. Right?
Oh, praise God.
When you are picking a party, when you are picking a person, when you are picking a candidate, when you are voting on a particular bill or whatever, right? What from A to Z. Just that where you are at a heart level, that's between you and God. I will always, especially in America, and I draw that distinction because with Buddy Walk, I have the rare opportunity to be able to speak primarily to it's starting to skew back to the United States more and more over the last 3 or 4 months. But for a long while, most of the ministry was international. It started in India and then went into Germany and then went and so I've been working now for a year and a half plus now at this point. I think time flies when you're having fun. Helping to set up churches and networks and systems in these different countries. Not with a group or an organization, but just myself. So I've gotten a chance to talk to people from other countries and how they process these things. So I draw the distinction with Americans because Americans struggle way more than other countries with this idea of making a political figure, a political stance, a political party their messianic figure.
Ooh.
And the thing that I laugh about that is we have plenty of people throughout the years, throughout the decades, especially when you get into like personal stories, right? Oh, my grandfather, oh, my dad, oh, my mom, my brother, my whatever. Of people that, okay, they live their whole life as fully functioning citizens of the kingdom of God. Love God, love others, the whole bit. But yeah, they once every 4 years go out and vote, or once every however many years or whatever, and they go out and vote. Okay. But literally, since biblical times, we have watched groups of people have the wrong beat on the Messiah. That was one of the scandalous things about the ancient church, is that they thought that they were going to have a conquering king, a conquering hero to come in and topple the enemy and destroy the enemy.
Yep, that was the whole. Yeah,
take 30 seconds on some parts of social media, some parts of the internet. There are still plenty of people who still think that Jesus is Republican or Jesus is Democratic, and that Jesus is coming to put in his systems and all of that, which baked into there, you've got your nuggets of truth, right? You've got your once you peel back the layers of nonsense, you've got the core stuff. So I'm not commenting on the core stuff. I'm commenting on the layers of caked on things that man has added to the equation along the way. So all of that long-windedness to say is, I think anytime that you typecast, I think you're in the wrong. And I know that for me, because hurt people, right? People have been hurt people. And so for me, I have struggled, and I've gotten that one wrong. That if you vote, you're wasting your time. If you talk about politics, you're wasting your time. You're part of the problem. It's more nuanced than that. But again, we got to make sure that we're keeping you on the rails.
right.
Personally,
Go ahead.
Personally, I think politics should be out of the church. Period.
Yeah.
You should. They separate church and state, and that's part of politics. Keep the church out of the politics. You're going to vote for whoever you want to vote for, whenever you want to vote for them, but don't do it based on what everybody in that church is agreeing on.
Right.
Pray about it, and then go by your heart.
Yeah.
Most of these politicians out there say they're Christian, but if you look back in their backgrounds and stuff, they're not who they say they are.
I've seen. I'm a watcher of what's known as the Daily Wire. Not necessarily religiously, but I've seen episodes on it, and several of they have a lot of co-hosts. So, but the thing is, and this is becoming a more common theme on the Daily Wire, and maybe this is something that we can kind of talk about a bit. Several of the co-hosts are Catholic. The rest of them are Protestant. So there's a variety of quote unquote, I'll just say Christians, loosely leave the term like Christian. Let's not define it right now, but they're Christians. Okay. They at least they claim to be. They claim to be Christians. They love the Lord. They read their Bible, etc. They pray, etc., etc. But there's something commonly that in this realm of news, if you will, that is coming up more and more and more and more. And it's Republicans need to, and this is, I'm quoting them, okay? Republicans need to start wielding the political power even more aggressively and start legislating these moral things. And when I hear that, now I understand politicians, they have to do their job. They're doing what they're going to do, right? I get all that. Okay. That's not my point. My point is when people begin to push a lot of the, I'll say, pushing the political agenda with a Christian malaise over it, because whenever, and you can look in history, every single time in history when religious morality was enforced, there's always persecution without equivocation. Always persecution, because at first it starts off with, wow, this is a good idea. This is going to save lives if we force this issue. And then it goes, well, okay, what are the nuances? Where are the gray areas? And then we got to get more specific. And then we got to get more specific. And then you get specific to the point where certain, I'll just say, for example, just let's give a pretend scenario here. Let's say there's certain laws given about how, when, and where you can worship. Now, all of a sudden, the law that's put in state, which, by the way, those of you who don't know, politically speaking, and I would highly recommend everybody look up the term blue laws. There are hundreds of blue laws on the dockets right now that they were put in place because of religious convictions of politicians. No other reason. Like, from a secular standpoint, there's absolutely no reason to have 99% of these. But when you look at them, it's very interesting, because if they were actually enforced, if all of them were enforced, there would be a lot of religious institutions in this country and a lot of even Christian institutions that would be in trouble, because some of them dictate when to worship, some of them dictate when to or where to worship, and some of them dictate how to worship. Now, we haven't gotten too bad into the how yet in America. But what I'm saying is if we start legislating these things because of our religious convictions, people will be persecuted. People will be sent to jail for no other reason. And I can give you a prime example. In Europe, this is happening right now. Poland, I have a friend in Poland. They passed laws that state that you cannot, I'm sorry, let me phrase that. Businesses are forced to not open on Sunday. Now, whether you think that's a good idea or not, that's not the point. The point is they're doing it for all of these listed reasons. And some of them are environmental, some of them are religious, some of them are this, some of them are that. But if you go to one law like that and it starts carrying down, it starts getting harder and harder for those who have decided to worship on other days, or to decided to worship other ways. For example, here's another prime one. When it comes to these type of things from the negative side, there was a lady, and I saw the whole video. It blew my mind. She was arrested because she was outside of an abortion clinic praying in her head.
We just lost Joe. There he is.
There he is. But she was outside because the laws state that you cannot block access to an abortion clinic. But she wasn't outside the door. She was walking around the building and praying in her head. And the cop stopped her and asked her what she was doing. She said, "I'm praying in my head." And he said, "I'm going to have to take you downtown and question you." And he arrested her. Like, are you serious? Yeah. But anyway, my point, though, is nonetheless, when you're trying to push religious and moral laws or moral political decisions like this with a religious malaise over it, even if it's and I'm sorry, a lot of these social justice warriors, it's practically a religion, man. Like they donate so much time and money and everything. And I understand social justice and I believe in it, but you got to understand there's a biblical social justice. And when we try to put our own definition of what social justice is, we're fallen man. It's gonna screw up. We're gonna put something in there that's not what it is. And I'm just saying, I think you got a really good point here, Joe, and you're really going off in a great direction with this, because how far should especially Christians go when it comes to stuff like politics? Because I'll be I'll be frank with you. I vote. I don't know if it matters or not, but I vote. It is a right in this country. There's religiously speaking, there's nothing or scripturally speaking, there's nothing against it, but
No.
I don't go out and, I don't know. I really appreciate those who try to do a lot of stuff with like abortion. And I believe it's great. I really do. But it's one of those things where it's like, honestly, until Christ comes and takes us all home, that this problem is just going to be a never ending roller coaster up and down when it comes to stuff like abortion, or, I mean, that's just the hot button here. Like my niece, God bless her. She joined the Right for Life in our area, our region. And I think it's great, but I also think it's an uphill battle with all this stuff. So
let me take that.
Go ahead.
So let me take that particular button and let me press it. I'll be the controversial one.
Beep.
So being a part of the house church movement and being people that are outside of the system in certain regards when it comes to a denominational approach to church and all of that, my wife and I have had a lot of people come across our door that have been hurting or in some way have been discarded by the larger collection,
like church,
and that church wise, people wise, that sort of thing. We tend to attract misfits and people like that.
Okay.
And I sat back when the whole Roe v. Wade thing was going off and everybody's going off and all this kind of stuff. And I'm just sitting back and I'm watching what everybody's doing. What's everybody doing? And I am watching as people with thunderous applause are acting like there's never going to be another abortion again in life. Like we have conquered this great moral issue and all of that. Now, don't get me wrong. I would probably be considered to be pretty stereotypically conservative Christian in my stance, in my opinions about abortion. Okay. If we are actually going to sit there and say that we are pro-life, what about the life of that scared mom? What about the life of the child after it's born? What are we going to do about that?
Mm-hmm.
What are we going to do about caring for the orphan and the widow? What are we going to do about that?
Yeah.
So that was one that for me hit home because I watched one group of people that my wife and I love very much, care for, and have ministered to, and the whole 9 yards, petrified because of the implications of what happens next. And then I have this other group of God. I swear, guys, I saw this. God won a victory today with all of that. Like, are you outside of yourself? Are you? And that's the, yeah, that God won a victory because of that legislation.
I understand
That's
why they would say that, but at the same time, it's
It
far
wasn't
from
God
wrong.
that wanted it.
right, but that's the thing, Justin. That's the thing. I understand what you're saying and what you're getting at when you say I understand why they would say it, but I even question the moralism of it all. Is that actually the moralism that the Bible is talking about? Is that actually the ethical system? And we're not talking about the actual death portion of it. We're talking about ethics. We're talking about morality. We're talking about the actual approach that the Bible says and doesn't say. And have we co-opted those terms into something that fits a modern context? And that's what I get at, that systematically, when you look at trying to marry these worlds, they are simply completely and totally incompatible.
Trying to marry them together perfectly. Yeah, no, I agree.
You know, I'm all for I'm all for the idea of being pro-life in the full sense of the term. Obviously.
Yeah.
Like, but in the full and complete context.
And
Words mean things, and we can't cherry pick.
Yeah. And just going off of that, and that's one thing, like, I appreciate our community here because we have a system known as, I say a system, it's actually a charitable organization known as Love Inc. or His Love.
Yeah,
We
we
actually have
have
two of them. Love Inc. helps ladies in exactly what you're talking about, and His Love helps all expecting anybody. And even after, they will give them clothes and food and everything, because you're absolutely right. Lost him. Pretend I'm talking to Joe. He's got a point there, because what about the mother? It's great. Like, I agree. I don't think we should be killing babies. That's probably not the best thing in the world to be doing. But at the same time, what are we doing for those mothers that need that help? What are we doing for those mothers that are frightened and don't know what to do, and don't know? Many of them don't even know that there's another option out there.
Yeah.
And I appreciate so many of those ministries that realized that well before Roe v. Wade was overturned. And they already had established, like, I heard, politically speaking, I heard a lot of people from the opposing side of Roe v. Wade say, well, yeah, all you really care is about that baby being born, but what about everything that happens afterwards? Well, I'm like, but that's why Christians and a lot of churches have ministries for exactly that.
Well,
Like, they have a lot of ministries to help those type of
Yeah.
things. And just to Joe's point, that is the point. It's not just about not killing that baby. There's a lot more steps in there.
there is.
Yeah.
He kind of said something that, everything kind of boils down to a choice. God gave us a choice between right and wrong. He basically told us to choose. So, I mean, what we're talking about here with abortion and stuff like that, it's a choice. I don't believe it's okay to kill a baby.
Oh.
He must not have been able to hear us, but it's a choice.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Unfortunately, people make the wrong choice, in my opinion.
Well, there was man. I think the organization is called 30 Days to Life or something like that. And they have, I want to say it's like a 78% success rate. And all they do is they help ladies, and they help them, before, during, and after. And that's all they do. They just help them know that there's another side to this. And quite frankly, that's the heart of the Christian mind. That right there is it. That's where it should, like, that effect that changed the world, right? And I think, Joe, let me see if I can pull it up. You said it really well, and maybe you can just repeat it for me if you can remember what you said on Chili Chat. You said Christians should be operating in the world, but not part of it, or something like that. How did you word that?
Yeah. So with I'm trying to think of exactly. I'm trying to find exactly what I said. Part of, but not. Part of that is sharing the gospel, but none of that is changing the world, and that's the idea. And that's the idea of changing the world that leads to a lot of the nonsense.
It's an idea of changing the world that leads to a
It's a-
lot of announcements. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a matter of people knowing that we're in a world that's always going to be in opposition to us. So
Yeah.
when we minister and do these things, and we are doing the, as James calls, true religion, true undefiled religion, that is being operating within the world, but not under the idea that we're called to change the world, because the world is always going to be what it is. That's always a losing battle to try and change the world. And it doesn't just fall on the shoulders of something like abortion. That's an easy one to go after,
Yeah.
especially this year. But there are so many social causes that we have seen. And if there's any one thing systematically that we have seen over the last 3 years, is that, oh man, the last 3 years made a lot of Christians squirm, because you took everything away, because you took their pews away, because you took their silos away, because you made it so that way they were forced to show their hand and to actually pony up and love on somebody by putting a piece of fabric on their face for 30 seconds.
No, I understand.
You know, and a lot of people have had a lot of things to say. And the thing that bothered me about the whole thing is so much of it was under the guise of, we still got to come together. Okay, look, I'm not going to ever state that there isn't a very real and very significant corporate portion to the kingdom experience. That is important in a very substantive way. But is it just a matter of going to the building? What if it's a community, but the best thing that you can do at that time is come together like this?
Yeah.
Is it still a community?
Right.
And if the answer is no, or you got something like, what was it? Was it Super Bowl Sunday that there was a big to-do about whether or not churches were going to open, and there was a whole kerfuffle. Yeah. Like,
wait, what? Super Bowl? What does that have to do with anything?
There was a big,
either have Super Bowl parties, or they don't show up for church because there's a Super Bowl going on.
Oh,
yeah. So there it's another one of the examples of there being a kerfuffle about the specifics of the service and all of those kinds of things. And it gets into this whole idea of what is our posture within the world that we are called to, because if we're allowing the circumstances and the situations and the stances to be the leading charge, and we're calling people less than because they have a different stance, or we're leading with that, or we're holding back from them because they hold a different stance. I was asked recently on one of my talk shows. I was given a scenario, and I'll you know what? Let's have a thought experiment real quick.
Ooh, I love them.
Let's say you're at work, and there's somebody who comes up to you and they identify as they, them. So we're not talking about he, she. We're talking about they, them.
Okay.
Most people, the easy answer for this is, I'll call a person Steve. Like I call a person by their name. You know what I mean? I'd rather call a person by their name anyway. You know, that's that. But what happens when the person puts you in a corner and says, no, 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 I don't want to be identified by my name. I want to be identified by my pronoun.
Okay.
Do you call the person they?
That the answer to that question is, are you trying to reach them or not?
Before I go off on that one,
right.
I want to hear from you.
Okay. I'll put it this way. In our church, we had a I'm going to get this wrong. Is it a transgendered woman?
I mean, it depends on what
was it a guy that's going through the sex change?
Yes, it was a guy.
Transgender woman.
Yeah.
Okay. So transgendered woman. So we had a transgendered woman started coming to our church.
Right.
We are very welcoming. We accommodated as best we can. And this was my response. Number one, I worked with the person in general. So this situation you're bringing up is real. Although it wasn't a they, them, it was a he, she. I'm sorry, she, her thing. But fine. Because I didn't want, I put this as nicely as I can. Because I didn't want to create a barrier between the communication between me and them, I called her.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be able to have that open door to communicate. Okay. I wanted to be able to have that door so that I wasn't just another one of those people that was just fluffing them off and pushing them away. Now, mind you, there may be circumstances where it may dictate otherwise, but that was my stance with it because, quite frankly, I don't care what their labels are. I care about them.
Their heart.
Right. Who are they? And if a pronoun is what's going to hold between me and them, I'm going to tear it down and just use whatever they're requesting. Fine. Okay. That's not going to be a barrier between me and them though. And that's what happened to me. And that's an actual experience. So it's funny that you said, what if you had to work? Yeah, it was actually at work. It first started at work and then they started coming to my church. So.
How about you, Sean?
I think I personally would probably call them what they want to be called, just out of the fact that you have to be able to communicate with that person. If you don't call them by what they want to be called by, they're not going to listen to a word you say.
Right.
Keeping that door open.
You got to keep that door open. And eventually you say, you could tell them, hey, I don't get it. I don't believe in the way you believe in, but out of respect, I will call you a her.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And you can have those adult conversations and it believe it or not, most of the time it turns out fine. Like we even accommodate, at least as far as our church is concerned, we even accommodated and we installed new bathrooms. And it was just, unisex family bathrooms. Not a big deal, because it worked. Everybody was happy and it worked,
like they always say, love the sinner, hate the sin.
Right. And for probably a couple of years, I'm trying not to say her name. We tried to reach this person for many years, but I honestly don't know where they are now, so I can't really answer to the punchline of that story, unfortunately.
So the two guys that I was on the air with at the time really struggled with that one because the instinct for a lot of Christians is to say, I will not state something that isn't real. Some version of that, right?
Right.
But why are you scared that you're gonna backwards your way into that's kind of the same mindset that gets people scared of, is Christmas pagan? Is Halloween pagan? Am I going to catch the demonic by doing that? No. All of that stuff, whether you are worshiping God or something else, it's intentional. It's all a matter of intention. And I watch Christians squirm with some of these things. And I don't know if it's because I'm probably a little bit more secular than the next guy. I spent way more of my life away from Jesus. And so I've got a pretty short line for the Christian rhetoric and nonsense. And I have no qualms with telling you how it is. And that's, I find myself in this situation where there's been a lot of people hurt over the years. And that's why I ask these questions, because it seems like it almost seems like a renaissance of the thought with everything that's going on, because those R words are on the tip of people's tongues right now.
Oh yeah.
And so it almost feels like there's this this uptick again of this mentality. And I don't care if it's about a shot, a mask, a pronoun, how people gather, what day they gather, what the communion looks like, what the worship looks like. We'll always find something to disagree about. That's what humans do. Humans are experts at finding things to disagree about.
Can I ask, why do you think you two, between the two of you, and I got my own opinions on this, but why do you think, because, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm just now open my eyes and I see it now. Why do you think over the last, I'll say 3 years, the politically, I don't know, why do you think Christians have been stoking the political fire more and the social justice fire more than in recent past? Like in the last, we'll say in the last 20 years. Why has it been that just the last few years, 3, maybe 4 years, that the fire's been stoked more than normal? And I know we only have a few minutes left. We were talking about this type of thing, and you're bringing this topic up of revolution and, Christians going out and saying, we've got to, wield our political power, or whatever it is, because like you said, it can be anything. Why do you think that in the last few years it's been pushed more? At least maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's wrong here. Maybe
could it be because they're trying to cause division amongst people?
Well, that's what it does do. Either way.
Is that the agenda that they're pushing?
I don't know. I personally believe, in my opinion, I think it's the social justice buttons are being pushed more because the political side, like there's more social justice in general being pushed. So the church feels like it has to have a hand in it. Do you know what I mean? Like they feel like they have to get involved. They feel like they have to be the ones to make that change. Because after all, we're Christians and we have the truth. Now, I do believe we have the truth. But I'm just saying, I think it's because it's been pushed just in general more. Christians feel like, well, we got to get on the bandwagon. We got to have this cause. Do we not have a cause? To quote, sorry. At least that's my opinion. I think it's just in general, it's more, and Christians feel like they got to jump on the train.
Here's the thing. A lot of the noise got turned off. Again, Christians got comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
They had their pew, they had their building, they had their Sunday morning, they had their coffee station, they had the whole 9 yards. What happens when you take all of that stuff away? They need something else to focus on. Oh, I don't think that this was a grand agenda of anybody. I think there are people that wield any stance for their own gains. I don't think it's limited to one side or another or this or that. I think anybody will do that. at some level of it. That's why I'm 100% believe that politicians are paid liars. I said what I said. But Christians found themselves very firmly comfortable commenting and all of that themselves without needing much prompting from outside anybody. And part of the issue is everybody was forced to sit home and watch the news. And so a lot of people were woken up to a lot of very real realities that go on every single solitary day.
Especially the parents when they had to do that remote learning thing and they found out what their kids were actually learning, and a lot of things that just,
well, you look at anyone,
another can of worms. I'm just saying a lot of things. You're absolutely correct. A lot of things surfaced because we were forced to stay home and like actually see the world through different lenses.
And you look at the reality that some people were forced with their own biases. What happens when you get presented straight in front of your face with racism? Do you defend racism, make allowances for it, or do you call it for what it is?
Mm-hmm.
What happens when you're presented straight to your face the limitations of what you have made church to be? Do you reorient and realize and pivot? Or do you double down on the system? And anybody who goes against that is wrong. What do you do when people are presented with a medical issue that is scientifically backed? Do you deny science? Because God wouldn't want you to put this stuff in your body.
One of the disciples was a doctor.
Right. So I think what happened was that a lot of the noise got stripped away and people were forced to confront their own biases in a very substantive way. And I think that is why you saw so much division. I don't think it has anything to do with anybody other than the fact that people were presented with themselves. And that's uncomfortable. I know when I am presented with myself and my hangups and my issues, a lot of it comes from me. I'll be honest with everybody. I've got trust issues because most people that I have been around have proven that I have every reason to have trust issues. So I don't. I'd be the first one to admit, man, that old boxer in me comes out when I'm around people and you know, yeah, I get a little ready to throw them up and start defending myself in situations when I don't need to defend myself. I just need to shut up and have a conversation.
Yeah, but here's the thing. When we're faced with ourselves, obviously we can't be the bad guy in our own story, can we? We can't be the enemy and we can't be the enemy in the narrative.
We always have to justify why we think what we're thinking.
Right.
Right.
Awesome. Well, I think I will push the button. You guys good?
I think so.
I think this is good.
It's a big topic that could last for a long time.
I know, and that's when you brought it up. I'm like, wow, this could go so many ways, just because it's there, and we barely brushed over half of this because there really is. There's so much that can be brought up about this. Let me go ahead and close out in a word of prayer, guys, and we can just wrap this up. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much once again for this time you've given us together. I pray, Lord, that you please continue to bless the time that we're allowed. Please bless the time when we read Scripture. And I pray, Lord, that when it comes to just this conversation, Father, you help us all to be less divisive when it comes to these political issues, political topics, and so forth. Father, help us. God, give us that common ground that we can join together, Father, and band together, as Joe often says, Lord, talks about the kingdom, building the kingdom up, Father. I pray, Lord, you help us to do that. We love you so much, and we thank you. Pray this all in your heavenly name. Amen. Well, this has been Justin.
This has been Joe.
This has been Sean.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Until next week. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.